All right, good evening. This is the June 2nd, 2021 Cottage Grove City Council meeting, which I am calling to order. The first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance, so please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, will the clerk please do the roll?
Councilmember Mills.
Here.
Councilmember Dennis.
Here.
Councilmember Thiede.
Here.
Councilmember Olson.
Here.
Mayor Bailey.
Here. Next item on our agenda is open forum. This is the opportunity for anybody that wants to speak on anything that's not on tonight's agenda is welcome to do so at this time. We had a sign-up sheet out in the entryway. We do ask that you limit your time to 2 minutes, but I have 2 people that did sign up. And we'll start just down the list here, and then we'll see if there's anybody else in the audience. Is it E. Clancy? Yes. Ma'am, if you just want to go up there and speak, and I'll read your address since you already have it on here. It's 8063 103rd Street South, and the topic is Mississippi Dunes. He's doing it.
Here.
Yes, thank you.
I wanted to bring this up to the city council about the Mississippi Dunes development before you guys go any further, just thoughts that I thought I should mention. One thing I was just wondering, how come letters have not gone out to all the residents of Cottage Grove, Gray Cloud, and St. Paul Park in regards to this issue? Just mentioning it, because that doesn't seem to be anybody else hardly knows about it. I believe this was originally the Kuzmark Farm, consisting of 426 acres. Then it was purchased by Jim Oakey in about 1949, 1950 era. Ashland originally bought this property probably in the mid-60s, then used it for a dumping grounds and burying their byproducts in containers in the soil. Ashland originally, trucks would go over there dumping frequently Ashland's leftover chemicals in containers from cleaning out their tanks that they would have to do once a year. My husband's brother-in-law worked at Ashland, so did his father. They lived in St. Paul Park, so they were very familiar with what took place there, why we happen to be familiar with it. When my husband walked on this property with our brother-in-law in the 80s, he pointed out to him where some of the dumping took place. It is my understanding that is why the DNR acquired this piece of property for free so the land would not be disturbed. I spoke to one of the original farm owners this afternoon. He remembered renting this property and running and farming it in the 70s. He said in the center of this farm, he saw black soil, like black top oil hardened there. Since this land is nothing but sand, who knows by now what has seeped into the adjacent soils. The Mississippi Dunes probably was approved originally as a golf course because it would be only affecting the soil and not interfering with the soil beneath, be affecting the topsoil. Obviously, this was not your usual golf course layout. That's my thoughts.
All right, thank you. Thank you. All right, and then, I apologize, I can't read the writing. Is it?
Carla Indery.
Carla, I didn't get your last name, sorry. So, and if you want, just go up and state your name and address for the record. And it's also Mississippi Dunes.
Yes. My name is Carla Indery, and I reside at 10659 Gray Cloud Trail South. I just wanted to come today. I sent you guys some information, some letters. There's been a lot of requests that I've made of you. I haven't gotten anything but the canned letter that everyone else received as well. And I appreciate that, I do. But I did feel that it was a complete dismissal of every point I made. It didn't address any of them. And in fact, it said, well, we're already doing this, basically, so kind of get over it. And that really concerned me. So I want to back things up a little bit. And I just want to ask, when we say things like at the last meeting, there were several statements that said the property owner has rights and we can only ask for 10% as a park. And I want to understand why a landowner who purchased property that was transitionally zoned has rights to build homes on it. I do not understand that fundamentally, and I would like to understand why we are assuming that they get to do that with the property when it is not zoned for that. And as far as I know, we have not approved any zoning change. So I do not think that's appropriate to behave that way. I also want to understand, as Lenny mentioned, why are we acting as if everyone knows about this and is okay with it? Because every neighbor I've asked is absolutely outraged that they didn't know about this and that even the thought of a housing development could go there, especially those who have lived here a while and know what happened on that property. So I would really like some answers to those questions. Doesn't have to be now, but I really, really would appreciate it. I also just want to give a plug that I have tried several times to email all of you, and I get at least one of you to bounce back every time. And I had to do a lot of research to find your emails because most of them were not accurate on your website. Not all, but some. So I just want to make that known. If you didn't know that, that needs to be updated. Thank you.
If you could, just as a side note for that, if there is something particular on one council member, will you, I know you can get a hold of me, I saw mine.
Yes.
But if you would email me, because then we could let everybody know. Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, I've seen all their emails, I
Yeah,
think.
okay. All right, is there,
Your one on the website doesn't work.
On which?
On the city's website.
The city one?
Yeah.
well, we'll have to check, we'll check in,
Yeah.
obviously to make sure. Is there anybody else that wants to speak during open forum this evening? Okay, I will go ahead and close open forum, and we'll move to number 5, which is adoption of the agenda.
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
We have motion by Councilmember Dennis, second by Councilmember Olson. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next is 6 is presentations. We do have one this evening. A is to the 2020 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. And I believe our Finance Director, Robin Rowland, will start us off, and then Mr. Matt, I think, Matt Mayer is going to take us through. Thank you.
Good evening,
Robin.
Mayor and Council. Yes, it's that time of year again where we are done with our annual audit, and we have produced a financial report which is reflective of last year's results in all of our funds. Matt Mayer is our auditor with Bergen KDV. I almost said just KDV. But Matt is here this evening to give you the results of our audit, and he has a PowerPoint that can be either long or short. I'm guessing you'll like short better. And he will be happy to answer your questions if you have any. So without further ado.
All right, welcome,
Thank you,
Matt.
Robin, Mr. Mayor, council members. Thank you for the invitation. Nice to be back with you in person after last year's
Yes.
video chat. Here tonight to present the results of the 2020 audit. I want to talk about those results first. I'm going to take a little time to give you some financial analysis and then give you some comparative data at the end so you can see how Cottage Grove compares with other cities around the state. The purpose of our audit is to test, examine, and give an opinion on the financial statements that are prepared by the city's finance department under the leadership of Director Rowland. We are providing an unmodified opinion, the best we can provide, and what that means is that the numbers in your financial report are a true and accurate picture of the city's financial position at the end of the year. You can rely on that to know how 2020 went and use that as a planning tool for future years going forward. You have prepared a comprehensive annual financial report. It's an award-winning document. I also want to recognize that. It's the 30th anniversary that you've received the award for recognition for the most complete, thorough, and transparent document that's possible for local governments. So your city is going above and beyond the minimum requirements, and certainly want to recognize you for that as well. 2020 was also the year of COVID, and along with that, the year of federal funding through the CARES funding. And when you receive more than $750,000 in federal money, they want to make sure it's going to the right places and according to the grant agreement. So we did a single audit for the first time in many years here at the city. You typically don't get a lot of federal money. We're looking at how those dollars were spent, making sure they were in accordance with the grant, and happy to report no findings or issues there. So all of my reports associated with this year's audit were the cleanest, the best we could provide, no findings at all. I do want to highlight one, though, internal control, and that is one where we look at your policies, your procedures, how you do business here as an organization. We had no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. Those are high-level concerns that could result in misstatements in your financial statements or misappropriation of assets. We had none of those, and I want to provide you that assurance tonight. But one of the common findings that we see at some organizations is called lack of segregation of accounting duties, and that's where it's a small office. You you don't have a lot of staff, and you're not getting all the checks and balances that you have. We did notice some symptoms of that arising here at the city during this particular audit with the staffing levels in finance right now. And it did not rise to the level of a material weakness or a significant deficiency, but it's something we're going to keep an eye on in future years. And again, if those overlaps or that lack of segregation continues, we'll continue to report that to you in future years. So just a heads up here for 2020, we'll revisit that again in future years. I want to talk a little bit about the general fund performance. It was a good year for the general fund. As a council, you put together a budget. That's the first column here on the left. Hand that off to administration. It's their job to execute that budget for you. And then we can look at the end of the year on how things went. And the budget you had actually called for a surplus of about $1.7 million in the budget for the year. Revenues exceeding expenditures, some transfers out to manage your fund balance, and you're pretty much on budget for the year. Revenue was a little bit higher than anticipated, about $500,000 higher. It's about 3%, not significant, but in the area of charges for services, development activity was actually surprisingly good during the year, and some of the charges associated with that came in better than budget. On the spending side, you were over budget about $400,000 in the general fund. That's about 2.5%. Public safety is the main factor there. There were some additional public safety costs during the year that we need to acknowledge, but also as an accounting issue in that we are recognizing your contribution to the fire relief pension fund now in your general fund where we hadn't done that before. And that wasn't in the budget, and that's the main reason for that. The transfers out, that was a big transfer out to your equipment replacement fund. You approved that in December. It wasn't in the original budget, but you utilized that to put some stores aside for future needs of the city and also manage the fund balance. The goal of your fund balance or the financial health in your general fund is to have 55% of next year's budget in reserve. By making that transfer out, you manage back to that amount, and you can see consistently over the last 5 years, steady revenues exceeding expenditures and that fund balance steadily growing and at that 55%. I think it was actually 55.1%. So very well executed budget for the general fund, a solid performance for the 2020 fiscal year. I'm going to skip ahead to a few charts. That's my analysis for you on the general fund. I would like to talk a little bit about some of your utility funds to wrap things up and provide that analysis. If you did have some additional questions on the general fund, be happy to cover those. But you've got 4 or 5 funds that we call enterprise funds, and these are funds that the citizens interact with significantly because they're receiving direct services from the city, and they pay for those services. We call them an enterprise fund because unlike the general fund, which is mostly paid for with property taxes, it's a fee-for-service situation in these enterprise funds. So as council members, you can analyze these just like a business. Is it generating operating income? Do we have reasonable reserves or not? And the streetlight fund is the first of those that we'll look at. And you can see that this fund has had fairly significant losses each of the last 5 years. This is related to franchise fees related to electricity, street lighting activity. And those losses have started to add up. But this fund did have significant reserves, so it was a conscious decision, not necessarily to move the revenue in that fund. You did start making some strides in adjusting that, and that drop in fund balance that we see here has kind of plateaued. So you're moving in the right direction. You got about $400,000 in reserve. Takes about $1.1 million to run that fund, so about a half a year in reserve there. But that's one that I identified in prior years for the council to keep an eye on, make sure that that level of financial health is adequate for you. That plateau is seen here, and maybe there's an opportunity to start moving that back up a little bit and rebuild some of the reserves in that fund. Another fund is the EMS fund or the ambulance fund. And surprisingly, in 2020, the runs were down a little bit. And as a result of that, the revenue was down a little bit as well. But the cost associated with providing that service can be relatively fixed. And as you can see, with the drop in revenue, with the expenses being the same, where that fund had been profitable and actually generating operating income to cover future operations in 2020, had kind of a break-even year. Actually a small loss with depreciation, a little bit of a operating income if we factor that depreciation out. Now this fund has been able to build some significant reserves over time. It has been very well managed, and as a result of that, even with a little bit of a down year in 2020, you can see no significant change in the financial health in this fund. So I think we're okay, weathered that storm. We'll continue to monitor that one for you as well. The water fund has had an interesting history in just the last few years here at the city. If you recall, back in 2017, that was the year of the water emergency, and you can see that with the rationed water, I guess you'd call it, the revenue stream associated with that was significantly down, and you can see the significant losses during that time as well. The council, along with administration, made a comprehensive plan associated with that, including rate structure for the future on that, and you can see how that rate structure has kicked in. You've been able to keep expenses flat, relatively flat in blue, with the increasing rates gradually over time. You can also see that that fund is starting to regain its financial health. Significant losses just 4 years ago in 2017, over $1 million in losses, in fact, book losses with the orange bar there, and now here in 2020, a break-even year with depreciation factored in. If we factor depreciation out, actually cash flowing positively about $1.2 million from operations. This is one of the funds that we use the reserve to help pay for City Hall here. Rather than bonding for City Hall, you use some reserves in this fund, and happy to report that the water portion of that loan got paid off in 2020. So the entire $6 million of reserves in the water fund are there. They're liquid, no pun intended, available in cash for you to utilize and not tied up in a loan to yourself. So that's a good place to be. You might wonder, you know, it only takes us $2.9 million to run the fund. We've got $6 million in reserves. We must be doing pretty well. But unlike the general fund, where that's all operations, this fund needs to go to those reserves for capital as well. And if you had capital needs, a water line emergency, something like that, it's not a significant reserve capital-wise. So again, work with administration. I know you're doing that to determine what's a reasonable level for operating health, and then a capital reserve associated with that too. Kind of a 2-for-1 when we look at the financial health in the water fund, or any enterprise fund, in fact. Sewer fund, similar situation here. Although the cost associated with this continue to increase as well for servicing the sanitary sewer flow. The rate structure has been adjusted as well in this fund, so gradual increases have been able to kind of sustain your financial health here. You're not making significant strides when it comes to operating income, unlike the water fund, where you can see we went from significant losses to positive operations, and kind of treading water, I guess, if you will, in the sewer fund the last 3 or 4 years. Not necessarily a bad thing, but at the same time, it doesn't put you in a position where you can build those reserves, and you can see those reserves have hovered between 5 and 6 million for the last 5 years. And unfortunately, this is one of the funds that still has that loan to be paid. So while we do have almost $6 million in fund balance in this fund, half of that, about $3 million, is actually tied up in a loan to yourself. So if you ever had to draw on these reserves, the cash is only about half of that, about $3 million. So again, $3 million in reserves, takes about $3.4 million to run this fund. You've got almost a year in reserve here, but again, not a lot then for capital, and we need to be conscious of that in case there's emergencies down the line there too. So moving in the right direction rate structure wise, and again, as this loan gets paid off, more of that bar will turn blue, and those will be liquid resources that are available for you to utilize in a decent position to end 2020 though. Just to wrap things up, I wanted to give you some perspective on how Cottage Grove compares to other cities your size. And this is a very busy chart, and I apologize for that. I think we'll kind of ratchet this back just to a couple columns in future years. But that third column are the statewide averages for revenue per capita for cities between 20,000 and 100,000. And that is where you fall, obviously, with your population of about 38,000. So a typical city is generating about $1,100 in revenue per capita in 2019. Now Cottage Grove, and you're the second column from the right is the 2019 number. We've got 3 years going across there for you. You were at $1,300, so about $200 more per capita. But you're going to find that all of that $200 is in the intergovernmental revenue line. And if you recall, 2019 was the year of the Hero Center. So the payments that you were receiving from Woodbury, the payments you were receiving from the state in grants are all what's driving that particular number. If not for that activity, you have been right in line with your peer group when it comes to revenue in the governmental activities. One other point here, I think, is the property taxes we need to acknowledge. A typical city your size is levying about $500 per capita for each individual citizen in the city. And in Cottage Grove in 2019, that was $400, about $100 less per capita on the property tax. If we look at spending, similar numbers here in that actually you're falling below the averages. A typical city spends about $700 a year to keep operations going. At Cottage Grove in 2019, it was $600. So you're making do with about $100 less in spending. The capital costs, and this is where it was similar to the revenue. The Hero Center, again, also I think some road construction back in 2019. Your capital costs were significantly higher than a typical city your size, but again, we understand the reasons for that. And then finally, the other type of expenditure we look at the bottom there is debt service, and you're spending about $20 less per capita to service your debt. That means that you're obviously in less debt, less bonded debt than a typical city your size. More of a pay-as-you-go approach here at Cottage Grove versus your peer group, and that again is evidenced by that internal loan we were talking about. Rather than going external for that, you're using your reserves to loan to yourself, and that model is generating these numbers ultimately, and ultimately fewer dollars going out the door in interest to third parties. You're maintaining those within the city here. So I hope a broad-based, comprehensive presentation. Again, our thanks to Robin, Kathy Moore, Assistant Finance Director, for all their work. It's not a typical day in the office for them when the auditors are in town, and they were very accommodating, very helpful, and they share the same goal that we do of accurate financial reporting for you as a council to make your decisions. I'll leave it at that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Matt. Thank you, Robin, Kathy, and the team back there too, Jennifer. Another fantastic year of many, many years in a row, both with the current group as well as previous before us. So very happy with that. I don't know if I can ask this question, if you can do this off the top of your head, because it's really neat to see that we're starting to quote unquote pay off the debt, if you will, on the loans for this building. On that one, on the sewer one, how much longer do we have on that piece of it? Do you recall? By chance?
It's about 10 years.
Left, or 10 total?
The amount owing is about $2.3 million, and we pay that down at approximately $250,000 a year.
Perfect, okay, I thought so, but I just wanted to make sure,
Yep.
And is that the last one?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty awesome. Cool. Councilmember Olson, thank you.
Matt, great to see you in person. Thanks for coming out this evening. It's always good news to hear that we're doing the right things in terms of providing services to our residents at a lesser cost than peer communities, and that we have the opportunity to also, spend a little less than our peer communities. So we're asking them for less money, and we're giving them more for less money. One thing that I wanted to ask about is, as you did the audit this year, and you looked at our position relative to the operating funds, did you have an opportunity to talk through sort of the age of the infrastructure that we're dealing with, and whether or not we have adequate fund reserves should the boiler break, as it were? I know that's one thing that we have talked about as a council over the last couple of budget cycles is some of our infrastructure is getting a little older, especially on the Thompson Grove side of town. And we have to be cognizant of the fact that, we could have situations arise that we're typically not used to where something fails. So I just wanted to ask if you feel we're positioned appropriately, should something like that occur.
That is a little outside my scope, but I can give you my thoughts on it to a certain extent. And I think what you've done is a great idea in setting up the equipment replacement fund, and you also have some other capital revolving funds as well. And what you do is take that excess from the general fund, if there is one, and lock those aside for future use. And the budget process, or the spending process, I guess you would call it, is twofold at a city. And there's always that current cost versus the capital cost. And the budget that I talked about earlier in the general fund, that's the current activity, and that's important. Every year, you as a council sit down in December, after months of work before that, and approve that budget that says, here's how we're gonna run the city for the year. So this is the salaries, the contracted services, the supplies that you need to run the city. And also, we're gonna figure out how much it costs to run, then we're gonna also determine how much we have to ask the taxpayers for, and that's what that process is like. The capital process is a little more complicated, as you indicated. You have to not only worry about current operations, but you have to determine what are our capital needs, what are our infrastructure needs, what is the plan for renewal and replacement down the line. And that's where a CIP plan or a CEP plan comes into place, where you go to the experts, your team here in Public Works and in engineering, and ask them, what is it going to take to keep operations going from a capital standpoint? And the hope would be that, unlike the general fund budget that's a year to year, I know a lot of thought goes into it, not just a seat of the pants year to year thing, but the capital plan is going to be 5, 10, 15, 20 years out. Here are the needs, here are the projected costs associated with that. And then you take that need operationally, convert that into a number financially, and then work with your finance team to determine how are we going to pay for all that. Can it be on a pay-as-you-go basis? Is bonded indebtedness going to need to be factored in? But that should be a conscious decision, and I hope that that's part of your long-term planning, your long-range planning. And I guess I would look to those folks through that process to get the answer that you're looking for. Unfortunately, when I come in, it's that 1 year of spending associated with that, and I can tell you it was appropriately done, but I'm not privy to all the works that go into that.
Well, you really read my mind, because I think what you're talking about is our fund balance policy and what we do at the end of the year with a fund balance, and how do we distribute that. And of course, we have a phenomenal team here at City Hall. Our finance team's outstanding. The entire administrative team's outstanding. We've had 30 straight years of awards for our financial performance as a result. And that's really what I was looking for, was, did you feel as though the fund balance policy that we've implemented has positioned us adequately? And it sounds like you do feel that way. And we even made a little bit of a change last year, where we allocated some additional funds, as you mentioned, to equipment replacement at the advice of our finance team. And I think that was very good advice. I just wanted to confirm that with you. Thank you.
Any other questions for the group up here? You want us to approve it?
Just accept it. You
Accept
don't
it, there we go.
necessarily need to approve it, but I'd like you to
Well-
accept it if you would.
We
I'll
could.
move to accept the report.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Olson, second by Councilmember Thiede. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you so
Thanks, Matt.
much.
Nice to see you in person. All right. Next on our agenda this evening is consent calendar. Is there anything on our consent that anybody wants to pull for discussion? All right, if nothing, then I'll look for a motion to approve consent.
Move consent.
We have a motion by Councilmember Thiede,
Second.
second by Councilmember Mills. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So if you happen to be here for anything that's on tonight's consent calendar, all of those items have been approved. Number 8 is approved disbursements. 8A is to pay the bills.
Motion to pay the bills.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Dennis, second by Councilmember Olson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 9 is public hearings. There are none this evening. 10 is bid awards. We do have one bid award this evening, and that is the Lake Robert Outlet Project Bid Award. And our Public Works Director, Ryan Burfine, is going to take us through this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So the Lake Robert Outlet Project is a project to install a permanent outlet for Lake Robert, also known as Shepherd's Wood Pond on the west side of Jamaica Avenue, just north of 70th Street. This is in line with our stormwater management plan that we've developed over the years. We've identified this as a kind of a naturally landlocked basin. It's had a lot of water level fluctuations and been creating issues for property owners. So having collected stormwater area funds to fund this project, we decided now is a good time to move ahead with it as that area continues to develop. So really it's just installing a permanent pipe, a concrete pipe outlet. Unfortunately, concrete pipe is the one thing that's been pretty stable in the construction industry. And we saw that with our bid results that we received. We did get 6 bids. Engineer's estimate was $185,000. You can see the low bid by Meyer Contracting was about $172,000. So below that engineer's estimate, favorable bid results that we received, especially, a couple bids that were below that engineer's estimate. And considering that, the recommendation tonight is to award that Lake Robert Outlet project to Meyer Contracting for the total base bid amount. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Council, any questions? Councilmember Olson.
Ryan, Meyer Contracting had the low bid here. Is that a contractor we've worked with before?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Thiede, that is a contractor that's done work in town. More recently through development projects. They have not had a bid, through the city, but very well-known contractor throughout the metro, do lots of street and utility projects. So
Okay, so we're comfortable with their quality of work.
definitely.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, we're looking for a motion. It's on the board.
I can make the motion, Mayor, to adopt a resolution awarding the Lake Robert Outlet Project to Meyer Contracting Incorporated for the total base bid amount of $172,313.71.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Dennis. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Thiede. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks.
11 is a regular agenda. We have no items this evening. 12 already is council comments or requests, and we'll do my start down here with Councilmember Mills.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to pass.
All right, there we go. Councilmember Dennis.
All right, slides right over.
There you go.
So, Mayor, I would like to make a presentation to you on behalf of
You can stand so people can see what you're doing.
Mr. Jarrett Wright, and I'll try to talk loud so it covers. Jarrett is a gentleman who lives here in Cottage Grove with his family. And he is a first lieutenant in the Minnesota National Guard and had been deployed for the last 9 months, well, actually 10 months.
Yeah.
And so he just got back home. And so one of the things he did is he came and he helped us a little bit at our Memorial Day observance that we did back on Monday. And so I'm very proud to hand this to you. This is a
Fantastic.
flag properly attenuated and folded. That is given to the City of Cottage Grove for outstanding support of our nation's veterans and service members. So the certificate itself, which I will hold up for the camera, I will read. This is to certify the accompanying flag was proudly flown in your honor over Delta Company 2-135 Infantry Regiment Quick Response Force Compound in the Horn of Africa during the Operation Freedom's Sentinel, April 10th, of 2021. Signed from Adam Maggie, which is captain, and also David Enser, first sergeant. And what I would do is provide this to you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
And ask that we get this in the hands of our staff so this can
Absolutely.
be properly put into a shadow box and proudly displayed here in our city hall.
Fantastic. And thank you for presenting it, and obviously thanks for him, I should say, for doing it. And by the way, he also is on our planning commission now.
Yes, he is.
Came back, he left our planning commission to be activated, and then came back and we said, get you back on.
Well, so a fun little story I'll share with everyone is that when this took place, and we knew we had a vacancy, since the person who left had filled the chair that he had vacated, I reached out to him when he was in Africa and asked if he would be interested in taking that chair back, and he was very, very pleased to do so.
Yes, very
So-
proud gentleman too, and we're very honored to have him be part of our community and helping our city, so.
Thank you. That's what I
Fantastic.
have.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Thiede.
Yeah, I did want to mention, and if somebody's watching this today, they'll, it's also been on Facebook and that, but the 360 group, but tomorrow here at the training center from 4:30 to 6:30, which is June 3rd, is having a redevelopment open house for the Cedarhurst Mansion. And I would, it's a very historic piece of property, and I know we're all pretty proud of it, and we definitely want to see good things happen with it. So we'd also want the people of the city to weigh in on it. So, if you get a chance between 4:30 and 6 tomorrow night, June 3rd, at the training room at City Hall, come on out and take a look and give your input.
All right, fantastic, thank you. And I think what I'll do before I turn it over to you, I just want to pop in another question. Like I heard, I copied it like you did and put it on my Facebook page, and then I saw somebody say, how was this communicated? Was that outside of Facebook? And I basically said, yes, it was. There was actually cards that were sent everywhere. But on top of that, just to be clear, this developer is actually doing this on their own. We haven't even got to a planning process. They're actually polling the community, which I think is pretty cool. So I just thought I'd pop that in there with your comments.
That's a very good point.
Yep.
I've been very impressed with their intent to try to keep the historic nature of the
Absolutely.
property.
Fantastic. Councilmember Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple things this evening. First of all, I wanted to take a moment to express my gratitude to Councilmember Steve Dennis, who is also a member of our board for Beyond the Yellow Ribbon, of which I am a part, for doing just a magnificent job of organizing a truly heartfelt and impactful and frankly quite special ceremony for Memorial Day on Monday, right here at City Hall at our Veterans Memorial. When we built this building, and Mayor, I know you remember this, one of the elements of planning for this building was, as a council at that time, we dictated that we wanted to have a Veterans Memorial because at that time, there was no memorial in the city of Cottage Grove. And I think as we planned the Veterans Memorial, one of our visions was to have a gathering place for ceremonies just such as this, for Memorial Day and for Veterans Day. And it seems like Councilmember Dennis outdoes himself every year. He continues to make it better and better, and we really had a terrific ceremony this year. I want to thank Billy Heeb, who was our guest speaker, who has been friends with Councilmember Dennis for quite some time and a long-time Cottage Grove resident, and also all of the other participants. So while this is done under the auspices of the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon group, truly it was Councilmember Dennis who did the heavy lifting, and he deserves quite a bit of credit for that. So I just wanted to share with the public that if you were able to enjoy the ceremony, that's why. And as we get closer to Veterans Day, I'm sure, we'll continue to work very hard to make sure that we do justice by our men and women in our armed forces. Secondly, I wanted to congratulate a long-term employee at the city of Cottage Grove who sometimes flies a little bit under the radar, which is interesting because she has a very big personality, so you wouldn't think that she would fly under the radar. Molly Petraszewski, 23 years with the city, which means she started when she was 12, and she definitely does a whole lot with our Park and Rec group, especially the supervised playground program in the summer months. I know during the COVID-19 pandemic, she did quite a bit of work down at River Oaks because we weren't necessarily able to do all of the various programming that we do. But Molly is one of those unsung heroes who doesn't get a lot of credit, but yet it seems like she's always busy. She's always got something going on, and when you want it done right, you give it to Molly, and it happens. So I wanted to take a moment to recognize her contributions to the city and congratulate her for 23 years. The next 23 hopefully will be just as good. And then finally, Mayor, I just wanted to ask a question of our staff, and it's not a question I need an answer on right now. But earlier today in the consent agenda, we approved a speed study for Military Road. And last year, sort of around this time, we talked about doing a speed study on Jamaica Avenue from the roundabout at Jamaica Avenue and 70th Street up to Military Road. And I believe the staff was working with Washington County to try to put something together. And I just wanted to ask the staff if and when that has been completed, or if it's scheduled, and what the results may have been, or if it hasn't been completed, when we expect we can get that done. Again, I don't need that answer right now, just something I wanted to ask the staff to look into. And that's it for me.
All right, sounds good. Two things, just for the public's general knowledge, based on what you said. It's funny that both of you said something different. But the part of Military, just if the public is wondering, is from the stop sign off of Military in Jamaica going east, which is a dead end now because of the development going in there. Right now, the way it's situated, it's supposed to be 55. There's really no way it could be 55, but there's a process we have to go through because it's a state road. And so we're in the process, that's what we voted on this evening, to approve moving forward with that plan, because those homeowners would like that up in that area. Two items real quick, and I know it's kind of cool because we're getting closer and closer to the season. 4th of July this year, we are having fireworks at Kingston Park. I've seen some messaging out on Facebook and such like that, people asking, is there going to be fireworks this year? The answer is yes. We do have, other than the city of Cottage Grove, we do have our sponsors, Hy-Vee, make sure I get all these, Hy-Vee, Tennis Sanitation, Renewal by Anderson, and 3M. Are all the ones that are helping support a nice donation to help make sure that we can truly celebrate the end, or quote-unquote end of COVID, if you will, and do it in a grand way on the 4th of July. So, and that will be at Kingston Park at dusk on July 4th.
The Cottage Grove Lions will be there. Yep. We will be grilling. We will be selling.
The city, kind of helps and such with this, but the reality is it's the Lions Club that actually does some of the heavy lifting. So we want to make sure that we recognize them for the great work that they do within the community. And then I thought it was interesting during the budget comments, or the budget presentation this evening. I was noticing as he was going through some of the discussions, he commented about a particular line on where we're getting some revenue, and it's government or money that's coming in that typically we haven't been getting funds in the past. And I was pleased, I'm just going to bring this up. One of the things that I know the council, as well as myself, have really, I'd say, challenged our staff to go out and find money. There's a lot of cities out there competing for different buckets of money, no matter what it is, to help create or build or do something within our city, depending on what that, and there's a variety of different options. And whether it's money for parks and rec, or whether it's road projects. And so what I wanted to let the public know, we were very pleased. Our city is planning to do the intersection improvements down at East Point, Douglas, and Jamaica. And so part of that is a very significant $7 to $9 million project. Both of them are shaking their heads back there. And obviously that's a significant cost. And so we've asked staff, hey, can you guys go out and see if you can locate some money to help, buy down that cost? And we did find out today that the Minnesota Department of Transportation we qualified for $1.25 million to help go towards this project, which will be a significant improvement of that intersection. Now, it's not happening overnight. I want to be very clear on that, but we've got some more work to do, and we've got some land and things we have to deal with down there, but we are now on the road to making that happen. So I wanted to mention that, as well as other things, whether it's the Hero Center or other possible road projects, things like that are coming down the pipe. So I just wanted to say congratulations to our staff for doing the heavy lifting to get those applications and things in to make that happen. And hopefully that'll continue here in the very near future on a couple other items, and we'll keep our fingers crossed that we'll be able to get some additional funding to help buy down some of the items that we're hoping to do here in the next few years. And that was it. You already covered Mr. Dennis here in his great presentation the other night, or other day, for the Memorial Day. So thank you. Yeah, Councilmember Dennis.
Thank you, Councilmember Olson, for the kind words. And, as we all know, I mean, you're only as strong as the people that support you, and we had a lot of amazing individuals that came and were part of this. And I also want to share, because Pete's in the back of the room, Public Safety Director Pete Kerner. Not only the work that you did with me, but also our officers who were in attendance, and Sergeant Pat Nickel, Dennis Neitz and River Oaks, bringing up chairs. It was a lot of people that made a good difference. So this doesn't just happen with one person. I'm just the guy that kind of, organizes. But it's a lot of wonderful people, and it was a beautiful thing to be part of. So thank you all.
Cool, awesome, thank you. All right, next on our agenda is a workshop session, which is open to the public. We do have two items that we're going to be covering in our workshop, which will be going to the conference room. And that one is a community survey that we're going to be doing, and then the other one is our discussion around the community center referendum question. After that, we'll be adjourning from there because we do not have a workshop that is closed to the public this evening. So everybody have a great night. We'll meet you in the training room.